Welcome everyone to the Thursday edition of our Packers News live chat alongside Tom Silverstein. I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers strapped on their pads for a lovely Thanksgiving practice, gearing up for their game this weekend against the Chicago Bears. We'll take a look at how practice went today, plus we'll also touch on some injury news, look ahead at the Bears defense in just a moment. Before we get into that, as always, you can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question down in the chat. I want to talk a little bit, obviously, about football, of course, but if you have some Thanksgiving sides, hot takes, whatever you want to talk about today, we are open to it. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. The Packers have a lot to be thankful for in 2020, their 7-3 record being one of them. However, perhaps they're most thankful for the health of their team in Week 12. Wide receiver Montravius Adams and center Corey Linsley, who have been dealing with ankle and back injuries respectively, are expected to play this weekend against the Chicago Bears. Both of them have been practicing this week. Adams did not practice today. However, he did practice a little bit yesterday. Their outlook is looking pretty good per head coach Matt LaFleur. How important is their health, especially heading into these last 6 games of the season?
Well, I know a couple of weeks ago I wrote that they were approaching near perfect health on offense, and now we were going to find out what their offense was really like. And then Tyler Urban hurt his ribs, so they really just have not been able to get everybody together yet. But if Urban comes back and Alan Lazard's in week 2 of coming back, now Valdez-Scantling showed up on the injury report today with an Achilles, but he did practice some. Someday we're going to see what that offense looks like with all its pieces in place. And it's been pretty good, even with all the shuffling. Now, they had their offensive line in place, and I thought the offensive line played really well against Indianapolis. And they'll need them against the Bears. But, let's see. Let's find out if they're any better than they are now once Lazard's going and Tyler Urban's back. For some reason, Tyler Urban seems to play a big role in that offense. So we'll see what happens Sunday.
In some unfortunate injury news, defensive lineman Montravius Adams has been placed on an injured reserve with a toe injury. It's the same toe injury that he was dealing with earlier this season during training camp. He is not expected to come back at any point this season per head coach Matt LaFleur. This is very unfortunate for Adams, who was starting to play a little bit of a bigger role in this defense, finally getting involved in the run game and stuffing some big runs over the last several weeks. Now he becomes a free agent in 2021. How likely is it that we have seen the last snap that Montravius Adams has played in a Packers jersey?
I would say it's likely. I think that what will happen is the Packers will want him back, at a low rate. Excuse me. But some team with $1 billion of salary cap space is going to say, okay, this is a big guy who can move. He was starting to come on at the end of last year, and they'll pay him way more than the Packers ever intended. And they'll probably lose him that way, and we'll probably all go, oh my gosh, what are they paying him this kind of money for? But guys with that kind of, quickness and ability, just agility, don't grow on trees. So someone's going to take a shot at him, is my guess. And I just don't think the Packers will be able to afford him.
Let's take a look at this Bears defense this upcoming weekend on Sunday. Matt LaFleur said the Bears have one of the most threatening defenses that the Packers are going to face all season. And one of the big reasons it is so challenging is because of outside linebacker Khalil Mack. He has 6.5 sacks, 12 tackles for a loss, and 2 forced fumbles this season. Mack lines up mostly on the left side of the formation, meaning that right tackle Billy Turner is going to match up against him. How prepared is Turner to take on Mack on Sunday?
Nobody's prepared to take on Khalil Mack. I don't care who you are. I don't care what planet you grew up on, how many arms you have, how many legs you have. It's just, he is just the best pass rusher on the planet. And so, what you try to do is limit the number of one-on-ones you have where Billy Turner's out on an island all by himself where he has to block for 3 seconds. If you're going to block him one-on-one, then you got to you do some play action or a quick 3-step drop. You just have to play smart. And the big thing is he's going to get a sack. He might get 2, but don't let him knock the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. Don't let him cause a fumble. The sack you can live with, the fumble, lost fumble you can't. So, and Akeem Hicks is a problem too. I mean, that's what really makes them difficult to block, is because you've got to figure out a way to handle Hicks and Mack, and you can't double team both of them all the time. So it helps that they have Bakhtiari on the other side. He'll handle Robert Quinn, but it's still going to be a big challenge.
Third-year linebacker Roquan Smith is also a big reason why this Bears defense has had so much success. He has 96 tackles this season, including 15 tackles for a loss. The Packers had some success last week, limiting Darius Leonard, a member of the Colts, last week. He only had 6 tackles and a forced fumble. However, how prepared are the Packers now to go up against Smith, having had the experience against Leonard last week?
Well, so the previous 2 guys, Fred Warner from San Francisco, who's one of the best in the business, Darius Leonard is one of the best. Those 2 guys didn't kill them. It didn't just destroy them. And their running game, wasn't as good as it needs to be. So they just have to get out. If Lindsley's healthy, that helps a lot, because he can get off a double team block and get to Roquan Smith. But he's going to be aggressive, and he's going to try to blow up your running game, and he's really good at doing it. And he'll work right off of Akeem Hicks's hip and make it really hard for you to find him. And so it'll be tough. They've got to figure out how to get Aaron Jones going, especially in this game. I think you'll see them go to the perimeter a little bit more than they normally would. And so, at least make Roquan Smith run across the field to try to get to him.
All right, everyone, let's head over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions. Thank you all for joining us on this lovely holiday. It's good to see all of you. Let's start with Brian. Brian over on Facebook wants to know, do you think the Packers will try to stop the run first for once this week? Even against the Indianapolis Colts, who are not known for being a power run team, they were still able to post 140 yards on the ground. How likely is it that the Packers can have a better performance against the run this weekend against the Bears?
Well, if Mitch Trubisky is the quarterback, and we all expect that to be the case, if they don't have 8 men up on the box to stop the run every single time, then somebody's head needs to roll, because if you have Kevin King and Jair Alexander and Shannon Sullivan, and you're afraid to play man-to-man coverage with Mitch Trubisky, then I don't know what to say about you. They have to keep Adrian Amos up in the box, or they need to play a lot of Kamal Martin to go with Kirksey and not worry about the coverage as much. They've got to stop David Montgomery, their running back, who's had some pretty nice games this year. And they just can't afford to let the Bears offense keep their offense off the field.
Thank you, Brian, for your question. Let's go to John over on Facebook. Good to see you, John. John says, Mitch Trubisky will give Green Bay's defense fits with his running. Compared to Foles especially, Trubisky is known for being a much more mobile quarterback. How are the Packers going to stop him if he is indeed the one on the field on Sunday?
That's a good point. If they're going to play a lot of man coverage, if they're going to be in a single safety look and play man on the outside, then he is going to have some opportunities to run. And they're going to have to make sure that their rushes are really disciplined, that they don't let him get through. He's going to run some. But, I don't know if Pettin will go and play zone. They didn't play zone very well against Indianapolis. But maybe you just have to live with that. Maybe that's you play man, you try to shut down Allen Robinson, and then you if Mitch Trubisky's going to run with it, then you just have to accept that.
Thank you, John, for your question. Rod says that the Packers either should they have it. The Packers should drop wide receiver Darius Shepard, who fielded kicks and punts for them last week with Tyler Ervin out. Tyler Ervin has been practicing this week. It is expected. There's no reason for us to believe that he won't play on Sunday, which is good news for the Packers in their return game. However, Shepard struggled last week. He had a fumble. He didn't run. He didn't have over 20 yards on a single reception. He averaged less than 20 yards per return. Where do the Packers stand right now with Darius Shepard?
Well, it's kind of interesting that was asked because, they brought in, or they're bringing in former Rams, 49ers, Cowboys, wide receiver / running back Tavon Austin, who's a speed burner, but has not been all that productive the last couple of years. He's basically Tyler Ervin. He's a smaller version of Tyler Ervin, faster a little bit. So the only thing that tells me is either they're preparing just in case Tyler Ervin gets hurt, they have a guy on their emergency list, or they're thinking, maybe this guy could come in and take the burden off Ervin on special teams and let him return punts and kicks. He has been a returner, not an absolutely dynamic one. He was early in his career. He's 30 years old. We won't see him on Sunday. I don't even know if they're intending on signing him or they just want to look at him because he's had a knee injury. But they got to get someone with some explosiveness in their returns, and Shepard doesn't really have it, and up to this point he was very reliable. And then, he lost a fumble, and then that takes care of that. So what does he give you? And so you do have to start looking for other options.
Thanks, Rod, for your question. Let's go over to Michael on Facebook. Michael says that tight end Jace Sternberger, very close in the spelling there, is quietly having a nice season. He had one of his best games this past week against the Colts. 3 targets, 3 receptions for 23 yards. He's been targeted inconsistently this season. However, where is he trending as of right now with only a handful of games left in the season?
I would say he's there. He's available when they don't want to or can't get the ball to Robert Tonyan. But Tonyan, he is the man right now. He's the guy who's going to get the most snaps. He's their number one target amongst tight ends. Mercedes Lewis is always going to be in there to block. And then Sternberger is going to kind of pick up the scraps after that. He ran a really nice route on Tunyan's touchdown where he took the safety away from Tonyan, and sometimes that's really important to just be able to do that kind of stuff. He's still pretty good at coming across the formation on a run play and taking out the backside end. So I don't expect him to explode. I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but he just needs to continue to be a reliable complementary player.
Thank you so much, Michael, for your question. Let's go over to Bernard on Facebook. Bernard asks, will the new nose tackle really be a contributor? The Packers have claimed defensive lineman Anthony Rush off of waivers. He spent most recently his time with the Chicago Bears. Even though he's taking over a spot for Montravius Adams. However, Montravius Adams not really being that nose tackle type. Rush fits a different sort of role. What can the Packers use with him when he finally is able to join the team?
Well, this guy is a 350-pound nose tackle defensive lineman. Now, his stats haven't been bad. He's made some things happen, had a couple tackles for loss, a couple passes batted down, a half sack in very short amount of game action, 13 games over 2 years. He's young, very raw. I don't know what kind of shape he's in. The Bears didn't really give him much of a chance. They signed him with some protection, and then they never played him and got rid of him. So I don't know what the situation is. I'm guessing the Packers just want to take a look at him, felt like, who knows, maybe they can make something out of a guy who can just take some snaps in the middle and help relieve Kenny Clark a little bit, maybe take some double teams on in the middle and help stop the run. So we'll see when he gets here. It's going to be a couple more days at least, and he won't be available for Sunday, I don't believe.
Thank you, Bernard, for your question. Let's take a question here from Jordan. I apologize, we're having some technical difficulties down here. However, Jordan asks, will Rashawn Gary get some more snaps over outside linebacker Preston Smith? No. Smith has been underproducing compared to last season when he had double-digit sacks. This season, only a sack and a half. How likely is it that Rashawn Gary has earned more opportunities over Preston Smith this season?
Well, he has. He's earned, whoever it's for, he's earned more snaps on the field. And he needs to be on the field more often than he is, whether it's the three of them together or whether it's in place of Preston Smith. And maybe that would be the shakeup Preston Smith needs to get his game going. But I don't see how you can keep Rashawn Gary on the bench or how you cannot play him a significant amount of snaps. He's playing really physical football, and it's obvious he's healthy now. So they need to get the most they can out of him right now.
Thank you, Jordan, for your question. We have someone over on YouTube asking, can wide receiver Seth Roberts return kicks or punts? The Packers have Tyler Ervin returning this week. Wouldn't make sense to try out somebody new there. However, I would like to talk a little bit about Seth Roberts, who has about 7 years of experience in the NFL. The Packers have him stashed away on the practice squad. The Packers haven't called up a wide receiver recently. Their most recent receiver call-up was Juwan Winfrey, and he got a few snaps on offense. He didn't play solely special teams. Why haven't the Packers given Seth Roberts an opportunity when they do need to call up a wide receiver?
I guess he just must not be performing that well. I mean, he must just be kind of a insurance policy, and maybe that's what they're looking at Tavon Austin, that maybe they would sign him to the practice squad and in place of Seth Roberts. Seth Roberts is not a savior. He's, a scout told me he was like a fourth or fifth receiver at best. I think he's just a veteran that they have around that if injuries start to pile up, that they could call on him. But they obviously don't think that much of him because he's been with the practice squad quite a while now, and they haven't called him up once.
Thank you over there on YouTube. We'll go over to Facebook here. Roland wants to know, why don't the Packers try moving outside linebacker Preston Smith to defensive end? Roland isn't so pleased with the performance of the defensive ends this season. Smith is tasked with not only rushing the passer, but also dropping back into coverage. How confident are the Packers that he can continue in the spot that he's currently at, or would they consider moving him around?
Well, defensive end in the Packers defense is sort of tricky. So when they're in their base defense, it's either Dean Lowry or Tyler Lancaster, and you're talking about 280 to 300 pound guys. And Preston Smith is 260 maybe. So you don't want him in there in base situations. And at outside linebacker, he basically is the end when they're in their nickel. So there's really not that much difference. He just, I don't know if he's pressing or what. Mike Smith sort of addressed it yesterday, talking to the reporters, that he's got to get back to playing with power. And he's seeing offensive tackles take the same kind of sets against him every time, and he's not making them pay for it. And so he's got to kind of change things up a little bit. And we'll see if Smith tires of it and decides to go more with Gary. But I don't think a position change will help Preston Smith. I think he's okay dropping into coverage. He did that in Washington. That was part of why they liked him, because he was so versatile. But he's got to get back to rushing the passer effectively. That's the number one goal with him.
Thank you, Roland, for your question. And thank all of you for joining us today on this lovely Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. We will be back tomorrow to continue to preview the matchup this weekend against the Bears and to take your questions. For Tom Silverstein, I am Olivia Reiner. We will see you next time.